But just want to give you guys a little bit of context first on what we're doing, so that you know that first before I go into some of the lessons that I've learned along the way. So we're building, this product is called the Nima. It's a portable sensor for people that have food allergies. So you can test your food before you eat it and make sure that it's safe. So you would just take a little sample of food, put it into this capsule, screw the cap on, and then put it into the sensor. And then we actually have chemistry inside of here. And actually, I think I have some slides on this. So you actually have chemistry inside of the capsule. So there's not a lot of consumer electronic products that actually have antibodies and chemistry inside of them. So we're doing something a little bit different, a little bit just really outside the realm of what other people had been exposed to before. And so it was a great experience for us going into this new direction, just sort of unexpected and just unproven, which brought a lot of challenges with it. But now we have these units have actually come from our manufacturing line in China, so we're in the process now of working through pre-production, and we'll be shipping them a little bit later this year. So we've been through pre-orders on the doorstep of mass production, so I've learned a lot along the way that I think hopefully will be helpful for some of you guys. So we started the company about 3 years ago out of MIT back in Boston. Started there, and we are now full-time in San Francisco, so we moved out here in 2013. So you guys, I would definitely recommend coming out here, especially when you're working on hardware, something consumer-facing. It's really helpful. Our team has grown a lot. We're 18 people now. We raised a seed round in 2014, $4 million, and that's really what's fueled us up until this point, and working on a Series A close right now. So it's been, it's sort of been a short journey, but it feels like a really long journey, and excited to share some of this info with you guys. So when I was thinking about this, I was trying to think just what would be helpful for people that are interested in hardware, and just sort of what I've learned that I wish I had known on day one. And so I sort of split it into a few categories of product engineering, operations, then the marketing PR side, and then beyond that, so that's sort of like your core functional groups in the organization. But beyond that, I think it's really important also to think about the team, just how you're structuring team. And then also, obviously, especially here, fundraising is also always interesting to learn more about. And I mean, we're still learning more about this every day and all of these topics also. So I want to preface this by saying I'm definitely not an expert yet. I don't think anyone in the Valley is an expert yet. Everyone's always learning. The environment is always changing every day. So this is some of what I've learned along the way, and I think could have been helpful for me in day one. But always, take in and especially here, it's such a great environment for it. Just take in as much information as you can. Just be a sponge and really try to absorb as much as possible. So starting with product, this is something that I think we actually did a pretty good job of early on, but we also had some issues with along the way. So what I learned was really, really important is starting really with customer requirements and doing just a ton of market research right off the bat. I think a lot of companies they come up with some cool technology, or they have an idea that they think like, oh, I think that people like me would want to use this, or I think that this group of people would want to use this. And I think that's sort of how you have to start out, but really, really spend the time to test that. And when we first started the company, we spent probably like 6 to 9 months of only doing market research and talking to customers and doing user interviews and building non-functional prototypes and testing those with people before we ever really got into the engineering aspect of it. And after we did that, we actually have made barely any changes at all, like barely any pivots to the core product that we're releasing. And I think that's because we spent so much time up front. And in the very early days, when you might just be a couple co-founders, or maybe a couple co-founders and a couple employees, you're spending so much less money than you will down the line. And so it's really valuable to spend that time up front and really do that research and make sure that you're really, really understanding what you need to build, and then go start building. And as part of that process, one of the things that I found really valuable for us was building a PRD, which is a product requirements document. And that for hardware is essentially like that is the Bible of your product, of what you're building. And even now, 2 years after we've built this PRD, every single milestone that we hit, every time we have a new prototype, every time we hit a new manufacturing build, we run through our whole PRD and say, did we meet this feature? Did we meet this one? And any feature that we didn't meet, that's at that point you have the ability to be flexible, right? You can say, all right, is this something that we really need in the product, or is this something that we have to keep it around on the product before we release it? So it's really important to do that work up front so that you know what you're building, and also it gives you alignment across the whole team. You would be shocked at how difficult communication and like alignment can be, even when you're only a team of like 3 or 4 people. You might have completely different ideas about what you're building. So building this document, getting full alignment on it, I think that has been something that's really helped us out, making sure that we're all working on the same thing and really have all that just knowledge of what we want to build in one place.
So that's something you had like day one? You had a purity in place?
So I would say not day one. We spent all that time doing that market research. We spent, weeks and weeks doing customer interviews, and then as we were doing that, we started writing the PRD. So then we would write the PRD, and we actually started with writing more of like a marketing requirements document. So like, what do the customers want? And that came a lot from, first, my co-founder and I, we are potential customers. Both of us have issues with food and different food allergies or food intolerances. So we could use our own experience on part of it, but then we had to bring in all that other stuff from the customer. So we started writing out, here are all the things that we think are the customer wants. And then as we started prioritizing that into features and like what priority they were, then we validated all of that with user feedback along the way. So it was sort of this like parallel path, but that was locked before we started doing any engineering work. So with our product, like when we tell people about it, they say, oh, like that's such a great idea. Why hasn't anyone done this before? And for us, it was really because the technology wasn't proven yet. And so and I'll get into this when I talk about fundraising a little more, but one of the most important things for us early on was finding out what those key risks were. And one of them was, is the chemistry feasible? Is it feasible to actually do this in 1 or 2 minutes and get it down to the sensitivity that we need? So we had the hypothesis. We'd done a lot of research. We talked to experts. We brought a chemical engineer onto our team. So we thought that it could be done, but we didn't really know yet. And so we built the PRD, and then at the same time found out what our highest risk items were, and those were the first engineering tasks that we bit off. So we didn't start designing the whole product. We started on just the highest risk individual items of it. So then on the engineering side, I think everyone here has heard this, but hardware is really fucking hard. And it is way harder than you even think. I remember when we first started the company, we were like, yeah, we'll design this, like we'll do the market research, we'll have our prototype done in like 6 to 9 months, we'll be on the market within a year. It's now about 3 years later, and we're about to launch. So it takes a long time, and it's without like sitting down. I could talk about this one specific point for probably like 3 days. And so without like knowing all of the factors that go into it, I would say if you are looking to build hardware, if you're looking to get into this, just know that there are a lot of complexities that you don't anticipate. And every little thing that you think will be simple or can go fast, like even like something as simple as packaging, for instance, you think that's something easy that will go quickly, like you can spend months on it, and actually in a lot of hardware projects, the packaging is what ends up holding up shipping, or something like firmware ends up holding up shipping. These things that you don't expect or you don't think will be that complicated, just like everything is an order of magnitude more complicated and harder and will take longer than you think. So just know that, and if you do start building hardware, just try to talk to as many people, try to bring as many people onto your team that have been through product cycles before, because that experience, that knowledge is going to be really valuable. You're still going to completely underestimate how long things will take, but at least you'll be a little bit closer. And part of that too, which I think is really valuable, which we sort of did this, I think we could have done a better job of it, is building out a project plan and building out a Gantt chart for from day one to launch, because it really forces you to think through all those different aspects. It forces you to think about, all right, how do I want to structure my builds? Do I want to do more of like a waterfall approach, or do I want to try to take a more agile approach to hardware? How many prototypes do I think I'm going to have to go through before I can get to manufacturing? How long will this take? What people do I need to bring in along the way? And so it will just really, and I would say the same thing actually about a financial model, also building a financial model, because it just forces you to think about all those things that you wouldn't otherwise think about. That said, I think where we could have done a better job is being really flexible still. So you want to build that plan, you want to build your financial model and your Gantt chart, but then always just be willing to be flexible. And for us, when we built this big plan out, and it was a 1.5-year projection, and we would miss a milestone, or something would change, or something that we didn't know about would have to be built in. And initially, we took those as very negative things, and we like really took it really hard on ourselves and like beat ourselves up. And it just, I think both for our personal morale and also for the company morale, it just wasn't the best approach to it, because with hardware, with a startup, you have to be flexible. You're always going to learn new things. Things will always go wrong. Like people say build in like 20% buffer to a schedule, but even that isn't, like that helps, but it's still not accurate, because it's not everything is going to take 20% too long. It's one thing will take 5 times longer than what you expected, and that's going to completely just blow your schedule. And so you have to be willing to take those things as not a negative, not something that like you didn't plan well enough for, or you didn't execute well enough on. It just is, and it's something that you have to deal with, and then you have to move on. So I would say that's a really big thing that I think can help people a lot as they're moving through this whole process. And then what else do I have on here? Yeah, so prototyping early and often, I think this is really important, and also getting user feedback along the way. So just always making sure that you're, even if you don't think you're ready for a full prototype, if you don't think that you have something that you can show to customers, still just do it. Like the first beta that we did with our hardware, we knew that it would fail 50% or more of the time, but we still did it because we knew that we would get valuable feedback back from it. And a lot of the feedback was sort of irrelevant, because it'd be like, oh, well, the product didn't work 50% of the time. And you're like, yeah, we know that's going to happen. But when you get those other sets of feedback, that can just really help you understand parts of the product that you didn't really think about. And as the people building it every day, there are certain ways that you use it, or things that you just naturally do because you know it in the back of your mind, but the customer that's never seen your product before has no idea about that. And so it's just really important to build those prototypes as often as you can and get them into people's hands that are not on your team. And then also communication. I mentioned this earlier, but even in a small team, communication can be really difficult. And I wouldn't actually quite say difficult, but there can just be gaps in communication. There can be things that, like, and especially for us, we had chemistry, mechanical, electrical, firmware, product, and with everyone owning their own individual sections, like on an early team, you really want people that can bite off their section and really own it. You don't want to have to closely manage everyone. And so that means that you just have to think about how you're communicating, how you're doing updates, how everything's coming together, and being just really, really in tune with that from the early stages, and not assuming that the communication will just happen. Getting into operations. So this was something that was really new to us, especially I had never taken hardware through manufacturing before. My co-founder had never done that. We had a couple people on our team that had been through it either as an engineer on a product or sort of been on the sidelines a little bit of it, but taking a full product through manufacturing and through this process is so different, and it's just it's very difficult to anticipate what you're going to expect and just what is going to go into it. So one thing that I think people are starting to talk more about, and it's really worth it to really evaluate it, is the trade-off between manufacturing locally versus manufacturing in China. And I guess for each business, it's going to be different. What works better? What's ideal for your organization? But I think the main pluses of China is that is where the entire supply chain is. So if you're manufacturing locally, everything is still coming from China. every like resistor, every capacitor, every battery, everything is in China. So if you're there, everything is just much closer. And if you get a wrong part shipped, you can, like if you have to, you can drive down to the electronics market and pick it up on your own and bring it back to the factory within hours. If you're doing it locally, you don't have as much of that option. But it's getting better locally. Then the plus side of doing things locally is that everything is here. You don't have the communication lag. Like for us, we do calls either at like way crazy early in the morning or late at night with China. And we do that every week. When we have our team in China, we're doing that every single afternoon. And it creates this amount of lag where no matter what happens, you always have a full day of lag, because you can give instruction if something happens in the middle of the day in China, you're not going to find out until you wake up, and you won't be able to give that feedback. So manufacturing in China will be cheaper, but you still have to send your team there. You have to deal with the downside of that communication gap, and there's trade-offs. So I think I would say for this, I wouldn't quite say that like one is better than the other. I would just say be open to both. I think we were pushed more to China due to some of the high volume nature of our product. The people that we were working with, both on our team and the consultants that we were working with, had more experience manufacturing in China, and so there's just more familiarity there. But I think in hindsight, I mean, our team has been out to China. I've been there twice. Other people on our team have been there 4 or 5 times. So it really it sort of takes its toll, and it takes a lot of time and a lot of money to do that. So I would say that it's definitely worth it to explore manufacturing locally and then moving into China rather than just going to China. But still, it might be better one way or the other, or you can look at Mexico or other options. Here I would just say keep an open mind and really explore all the options before you make a decision. And then on the RFP process, this is request for proposal, or some people call it RFQ, request for quote. This is also a process that you don't really think about it if you're hiring someone to help you on some contract work. You might talk to someone, you get a bid, and then you sign it. When working with a manufacturer in China, it's a whole different beast. You have to go there, you have to visit 5 factories, you have to go out to dinner with every single one of the factories. They roll out the red carpet when you get there. You have like your company name on like a big billboard as you walk in the door. It's this whole different experience that you're not. We weren't really expecting it, and then the whole proposal process will in itself take about a month just to get the proposal back, and then you have to negotiate. You have to go through like which one is the best fit for you. And so that whole process for us, I want to say it took maybe 3 or 4 months, versus if you're looking for someone local to do some contract work with you, that might take 2 weeks, it might take 4 weeks to hire those people on. So just be prepared for the amount of time that's going to take. On the marketing PR side, this is also, so like there's all the engineering work, all the technology work that needs to be done, but that's only half the battle. After that, you actually have to sell the product, you have to get people to know about it, you have to spread the word. And here, so a few things. So first I would say, don't be stealth. I know a few companies that do. I just think it's generally dumb to go in stealth mode for a couple reasons. So one is, as a startup, you don't have a lot of people that know about you. You don't have a big network. You don't have somewhere that you can just blast out your product, and so you want as many people knowing about you as early as possible. So even at the point when we did our pre-orders, when we started our pre-sale, we already had an email list of 20,000 people because we had started advertising that really early on, and that really helped our pre-sales go well. So I mean, pretty much from day one when we built our website, one of the first things that we put was an email sign up on the front page, like very near the top. It was like our main call to action. And so anytime we got press, like with our fundraising announcement, like anything, any reason why people would come to the page, we tried to get them to sign up. Then eventually we started doing a little bit of advertising also. So partially just to test like advertising messages, marketing, conversions. And so we found actually Facebook worked by far the best for us. So most of that was through Facebook. And so that also built our email list a little bit. But the majority of it was organic. It was just people coming through our site. And so we were able to build this massive list of people that already knew about us, and that helped propel us. In the beginning, we didn't hit it very much at all. We didn't want to spam people. We didn't want people to unsubscribe because we weren't giving good information. So anytime we had like a really big milestone or something that we thought would actually give value to the people on our list, then we would send out an email. And then we did a big push when we started our pre-sales. And then now we try to do, because we have done pre-sales, we try to do a monthly update. Just for us, we're really into transparency. We think it's really important to be as open as possible, especially now that people have already bought our product and given us money. We want to make sure that they know every step along the way what's happening, what stage we're at, what testing we've done, how close the product is to being ready. So our head of marketing was, I want to say, our 6th hire, and then we hired a head of PR, what was she, maybe around like number 10.
How, like, time-wise?
So
a year, 2 years?
both of those were after we raised our seed funding, so it was maybe like a year and a half to 2 years in. But for us, I think that's some of the smartest hires that we made. We were able to really start building that strategy and that just momentum early on. And yeah, it's been just immensely valuable, especially having PR on the team. I think it is a little more important, and I'm definitely not an expert in like B2B sales or that type of thing, but I think for anything that's consumer, really, I mean, even like PR doesn't necessarily have to be consumer focused. There is also very enterprise focused publications and articles. So I think, I mean, I can mostly speak to consumer because that's my experience, but it was immensely valuable to have that on our team even like a year before we launched, just because it's really like now, I mean, we got one of the Time Inventions of the Year. We got the opportunity to be in the TechCrunch Hardware Battlefield, which we won, which that gave us a ton of press. Like we were one of the Travel and Leisure like best products of 2015. So none of that would have happened if we didn't have PR on our team. Like you don't get those awards just because you have a good product. It's because you have an awesome PR person that knows those people and pitches it to them. Also, on the stealth side, reasons not to be stealth, I think one of the reasons why a lot of people say that they want to be more in stealth mode is because they have this technology, this like amazing new thing that they're afraid of people stealing. I think that argument to me doesn't make sense because realistically, if you have a startup idea, you have maybe a 5 to 10% chance of it going anywhere or of it working at all. So if a big company sees your technology, they're going to wait to see if you can develop it or not before they go try to steal it. So there is like maybe a 0.1% chance that actually happens. So like I would never use that as an argument for why to be stealth. And yeah, I think just transparency and getting as much focus out to the world as possible is really, really helpful. And then, yeah, early on, I think one of the other things that we did that just proved really valuable was testing a lot of these marketing messages and just testing what converted well with people. So one of the things that we actually did was we put up essentially fake landing pages that people could buy the product on well before it was ready to sell. And so with that, we were able to test what messages worked well with people. We tested price points. We were able to test out all sorts of things and then actually had a buy now button. So then we could see, depending on who we marketed to on Facebook, who we were targeting advertisements to, what our conversions were like, depending on how we changed the price point, depending on what type of messaging we used. And we actually found really interesting data with that we weren't expecting. Like, for instance, a price point in the $150 range actually converted far better than a price point in the $50 range. So like we would have never thought that and never known that unless we had done this testing. We also just learned a lot about what specific words to use. Even just a small variation in a phrase could make a big difference on how well things converted. And so we were able to test a lot of that with services like one of the ones that we use is called Unbounce. We also just put ads on Facebook that would send people to our web page, and like we weren't really trying to sell anything or like get real conversions. We were just trying to test the messaging and understand things better. And because of doing that, when we did go to do our pre-sales, we already had a lot of information about how to target people well and how to sell the product better. So I would say doing that work as early as possible is really helpful because you'll learn a lot, and it might even influence the way that you're thinking about your product and the features that you're building. So we were looking for people that were familiar with consumer and people that were really like go-getters that could hustle on their own, but then also grow to manage a team. So for us, we also have like the sort of the culture, the type of people that we're looking for. We we have interview questions about like, what's your food identity, and who in your family has a food allergy, and like that type of thing. And it's not a requirement, but we joke that it is because of how many people in the company like have those issues. But for the marketing role, it was really, we wanted someone who had that consumer experience, who knew how to target consumers versus like enterprise sales or that type of thing. And we wanted someone who would be able to scale the team. We also had a handful of other requirements, but I'd say those were some really big ones. For PR, we actually were not planning on hiring a head of PR. We were planning on hiring a firm. But we had this woman, Heather, who is now our head of PR, who was just really, really excited about what we were doing. And she actually reached out to us when we were hiring our head of marketing, but it wasn't quite the right fit then. And she just stayed in touch. She would get in touch every now and then. And eventually she just built out a PR plan for us and was like, please, like, this is what I can do for you. And like, all right, you know what? This looks awesome. Like, yeah, let's do it. And she's been amazing. So I would say, like, one of the things for us when we were building out our team, we've had a few situations like that where someone was just really like a go-getter, and we could see they had that enthusiasm about the company, they had that attitude that they would work hard and just really like go at it for the company. And when we see that, even if it might not be like quite the role that we're looking for, if you have the right people, you can move mountains. And I think team, like, by far is the most important thing always. Yeah. So speaking of team, I think like that aspect of hiring for culture, it's so important. And like when I say culture, I don't mean like, oh, like we have like free meals in our cafeteria 5 times a week and we have a fancy office space. Like, that's not culture. Culture is the type of people that you want to be around. It's people that you can have really difficult conversations with, but then still be good friends afterwards. It's people that are really, really excited about your vision and about what you're building. And like for us, sort of one of the marks of that is even now we don't pay market salary, and we look for people that are willing to take that salary cut because they really believe in what we're doing. And if they do really believe it and they believe that the company is going to be successful, that means that they'll get that equity payout that is helpful for them. Or they just feel really good about working on something that they're passionate about. And I mean, even the company next door to us is a company that builds, they build sensors for essentially helping track waste management and just make it more efficient. It's sort of like how UPS has really routed their trucks really well. They're doing a similar thing by putting sensors in dumpsters. And one of the interview questions that they ask is, how excited are you about riding in a dump truck? And if people aren't really excited about it, then they're probably not the right fit. And so it's that type of thing that you just want people that are really stoked and like are really going to work hard for the mission that you have. And that's the type of person that you want to work with. And I would say like that is more important even than technical experience. You can have the most amazing badass engineer in the world, and if they kind of like rub some people on the team the wrong way or are a little too negative, or like you can feel that in the office. And we've made those mistakes. And I would say the lesson that I had there is if you feel that someone isn't quite the right fit or like doesn't just like mesh with your culture really well, first of all, try to address it really quickly. And I think there are a lot of situations where that can be turned around. But if it can't, then you have to part ways with that person. And we've had some situations where that hasn't been dealt with as well as it could. It might have taken too long, or it's really difficult to make those moves. But I would say 100%, like we've really learned that it's so important to make sure that everyone is really aligned in that. Another thing I would say, especially for founders, that's really difficult. And also I would say for a lot of early employees is being willing to hire someone to replace you and really just helping with that process. So I've actually written a blog post about this too, and at this point I've hired essentially my replacement probably 4 or 5 times. And every time it's because my responsibility and my role and what I'm doing has grown so much that I'm not able to handle all of it. And so like initially I was doing all our design work. I was the main mechanical engineer on the product. And then I knew that my experience wasn't just, I just didn't have enough experience, and I didn't have enough time, I didn't have enough bandwidth to be that engineer. And so we hired a mechanical engineer. We've now since hired 2 more mechanical engineers, and they're all working on the product. I was also responsible for project management, and we've now hired someone who does that. And it's just really important to be able to just put ego aside and be able to hand over that responsibility, because if you try to hang on to too many things, it's just not going to be executed well. And I think one of the worst things you can do is try to do too many things, because none of them will be done well. It's really important just to pick off the most important things, and also to think about, like, if you're a founder, what can you do as a founder that nobody else in the company can do? Or you as an executive, what can you do? What is your experience that no one else can do? Or you as an engineer, what can you do that nobody else can do as well as you? And really focus on those things and identify when you realize that you're lagging, or you need support, or you need help. Because it's difficult to do. It's sort of, initially I thought about it as like sort of admitting defeat, but it's not that. It is really building up your company and helping you be more successful. So that's something that I really feel strongly about. And yeah, it's not easy, but it's really, really helpful. And then, yeah, another thing that I really like that I actually heard at IDEO is this concept of peaks, not plateaus. And so if you think about a place like Google or Facebook, like where they have all these amazing perks, they have like dry cleaners on campus, and they have free food every day. When you have all those things all the time, that becomes your baseline, and that becomes what you're used to. And so what IDEO does actually, and what we've started to do more, is you try to have these peaks of happiness, these peaks of new things. So we don't do, first of all, we can't afford it, but also we don't want to do free food every day. We do it maybe once a week, or we'll do breakfast every now and then on a Monday morning, or we'll buy drinks for a happy hour on a Friday. And then you have these little peaks of unexpected fun, or even if it is more expected, it's something new, it's something different in your routine. And that actually creates a much, much better culture, and actually psychologically it's proven that creates more happiness than having all of these things all the time, because then you're always expecting it. So it's a dual benefit that, one, it's cheaper, and two, it actually turns out to make people happier. So it's pretty nice. And of course, fundraising, the big topic that is always top of mind. Especially if you're a founder, you are always fundraising, you never stop. It's always going on. And a question that I get a lot is sort of like, what was the focus when we were fundraising? What were people interested in? And as I've thought more and more about it, it's always team and vision. So early on, when we first started the company, you had asked the question earlier, like, did our technology work? No, it didn't work at all. We had a prototype that, it basically looked like a lightsaber handle. It was hand machined out of aluminum. It sounded like an RC car when it was on. It had these like bright lights that were just flashing everywhere. It was terrible. No consumer would ever have paid for it. But like, that was our first prototype. And so obviously, like, that's not a product that anyone would buy. But when we went out to pitch, when we were talking to investors, what they really honed in on was, what is the vision for the company? What are you trying to build? What are you trying to accomplish? And like, what dent can you make in the world? And are you the team that can do it? So early on, it was just 2 of us. It was just the founders. So are you the people, one, that have the technical background and the expertise that can solve these problems? And are you the people that will be able to build a team and lead and manage and really bring in the right people to make sure that you can build this? So we really saw that very early on. It was really all about team and vision. Then after we built our first prototype, we went out to raise our seed round, And again, it was about team and vision. So then our team was 5 people instead of 2, but still investors wanted to know about every person. They wanted to know what background they had. They wanted to know how many products they brought to market. And so it was really that focus on, can this team take this sort of rudimentary prototype that mostly works and turn it into something that will actually work and will actually come to market. And again, it was about vision. But here, in each stage of fundraising, we've seen that you need to have a slightly bigger and bigger vision. If early on you're pitching that, like when you're looking for angel money, if you're saying, oh yeah, like in 10 years this is going to be $1 billion business and here are the reasons why, and we're going to hit $100,000 in revenue within 4 years, like angel investors don't necessarily believe that, and they want to see you look at something that you can actually bite off and that you have a clear plan around. But then when we went for the seed round, they did want to see that. They wanted to see, oh, this, like, here's how we're going to get to $100 million in revenue, and here's the bigger vision that we have. And then later on, when we went for the Series A funding, then it was even a bigger vision. It was, how are we going to get beyond this core set of products that we're building? How are we going to expand beyond there? How are we going to turn this into a multi-billion-dollar business? And so you really have to think about who you're pitching, who you're talking to, and always be authentic, always really, like, you have to pitch something that you really believe in. If you're trying to sell something that you don't believe yourself, it's going to come across, and people will feel that. They'll feel the difference in energy there. And so it's really important to just know who your audience is and make sure that you really believe what you're pitching. But I would say as we went deeper into fundraising too, in the different rounds of fundraising, it became more and more about the tangible, about the product. In the round that we're raising right now, it's very much about more about, all right, how close are we to manufacturing? What are our sales projections for the first year? How have our pre-orders gone? And more of those, like, really numbers on it, whereas early on it was all about, here's the projections, here's the grand vision that we think that we can accomplish and how we're going to change the world. So it was just very different in the different stages, and one of the number one things that I learned about fundraising too is, when you're fundraising, go all in, 100%, and make that your number one job full time. For instance, when we were raising our seed round, we had between 2 and 5 pitch meetings every single day for a month. And our entire team, so Shreen and I, we were in meetings or driving back and forth to Menlo Park every single day. Our engineering team was resetting prototypes. They were fixing errors that came up. They were building new prototypes. And so it really became a full team effort for that month, 2 months that it took to raise the round. And I think that was really the best way and the most successful way that we could have done it. And then also, I think a topic that people are always very interested in is, should you do an accelerator? Should you do an incubator? Should you just go off on your own? I can speak from our personal experience of, we did an incubator that was hardware focused, but it was a slightly different model than, I think an accelerator is a little bit different because it's very short. It's very focused on hitting that milestone that you can present at a demo day. What we did was, it was through Lemnos Labs, who now are actually more of a VC fund plus office space, but at the time they gave us office space for a year, and they provided hands-on mentorship every single week, and they weren't really focused on, like, here's what you need to do in order to hit demo day. They were focused on, here's what you need to do in order to build your business and to give you the best chances of success, and in order to make sure that you can raise that next round. And they really provided a lot of introductions. They supported us through building our pitch deck. They gave us feedback probably 50 times and told us to modify our pitch deck until they were happy with it. And that level of support that we got from them, and I think you can get that from certain angel investors or from certain institutional investors too, but early on, I would say 100%, from my personal experience, 100% do it, because you get a lot of support and just this huge range of expertise from different people that you wouldn't necessarily have on your own. And then, my last point is, don't spend funds on dumb things. So you don't need a fancy office. You don't need free meals. You don't need company swag early on. Like, you don't need any of that. What you need is people that are willing to work for cheap, that believe in your vision, in most likely sort of like a shitty office space, but it really builds that just like that cohesiveness and that story of you're all fighting like for something together, and you really are fighting. You're fighting against the world. You're fighting against big corporations. You're fighting against all the people that don't want to give you money. And I think that's what you should be focused on. It should always be, how can we spend our money to build the best product and to get it to market? So early on, so we actually had sort of a fortunate situation of my co-founder Shereen was finishing her MBA when we first started the company. So she was sort of able, or we were able to work part-time together to sort of like test the relationship in the early days. But then from there, we went completely off of savings for, I want to say, 3 or 4 months. We both went full-time, and I really think that's the right way to go. I think if you don't really commit, you're not really in it, and you don't, one, investors want to see that you're really committed, and two, I don't think that you really put the same level of effort, and it's like if you don't have that fear that this thing is going to completely evaporate and you have nothing to fall back on, like you need that fear to drive you, and we had that fear. Like by the end of it, I legitimately had no money left in my savings account and was at my limit with my credit cards. And then we got the first $100,000 in investment. I was also, my co-founder had gotten married that summer. So we were in Boston for the summer. She flew out to San Francisco, got married, had no honeymoon, flew back. We kept working on the company. Then at the end of it, we did an MIT accelerator program for the summer. At the end of that, we still had no funding, but we really believed that we could get the funding, and so we're like, all right, you know what? Let's do it. Let's move out to San Francisco. We're gonna try this thing. If it doesn't work, like, hey, worst thing that happens is like we move in with their parents. We actually ended up moving in with Shereen's parents. So her and her husband moved in with her parents. I moved in with her parents. And we all lived there working basically out of her basement for the first month that we were in San Francisco. And then we got that first tranche of funding. So I really have to thank the Talaganians for feeding me and housing me for the first month that we were out here. But I think just having that drive and that knowledge that like this was the only thing we were working on. This was our only option. And if it didn't work out, like I legitimately would have had to fly home to Florida, like in basically the largest retirement community in the world, to just like live with my parents until I could find some other job because I was completely out of money. And I think that drive really helped us in the early stages and got us to the point that we are now.